Imagine walking through a dark, winding cave, your flashlight beam cutting through 20,000 years of silence to reveal something extraordinary. Across the walls, animals breathe with life, stampeding bison, galloping horses, leaping deer, all painted with a skill and passion that defies their ancient origins. This is exactly what four teenagers and their dog stumbled upon in 1940, deep in the French countryside near the village of Lascaux. They had no idea their playful adventure would uncover one of humanity's most profound and enduring mysteries, the Lascaux cave paintings. These aren't just relics from a forgotten past, they're a direct window into the minds of our ancestors, a gallery of dreams and symbols left behind by people who walked the earth millennia ago. What were these stunning artworks really for? For decades, experts have debated whether they were simple decorations, hunting manuals, or something far more spiritual. The paintings pulse with energy and intention. Every stroke seems to carry meaning beyond mere representation. Some figures are layered over others, as if the cave itself was a living canvas, used again and again for rituals we can only begin to guess at. There are strange, abstract symbols sprinkled among the animals, grids, dots, and shapes that hint at a symbolic language lost to time. Could these caves have served as prehistoric temples, places where early humans communed with the spirit world or recorded celestial events? The possibility that these artists were capturing not just what they saw, but what they felt and believed, invites us into a deeper conversation about what it means to be human. Join me as we step into the shadows of Lascaux to unravel the secrets hidden in these ancient masterpieces. We'll explore the theories that have fascinated historians, archaeologists, and even astronomers, from shamanic visions to early star maps. Along the way, you might find yourself questioning everything you thought you knew about prehistoric life, art, and the universal drive to create meaning. This isn't just a story about cave paintings, it's a journey into the heart of human curiosity, creativity, and our timeless desire to leave a mark on the world. By the end, you'll see these magnificent works not as static images, but as living stories waiting to be understood. On a crisp September afternoon in 1940, the quiet French countryside was about to give up one of its greatest secrets. Marcel Ravadat, an 18-year-old apprentice mechanic, was out walking with his friends Jacques Marcel, Georges Agnel, and Simon Cohen-Caz. Their dog, Robot, was chasing a rabbit when he suddenly disappeared down a hole created by a fallen pine tree. The boys, thinking their pet was in trouble, widened the entrance, and Marcel was the first to slide down into the darkness. What he saw by the dim light of a makeshift lamp would stun the world. His eyes adjusted to reveal not just a cavern, but a cathedral of art. The flickering light danced across walls teeming with life, massive, powerful aurochs with sweeping horns, a graceful procession of horses and stags that seemed to leap through the stone. It was an overwhelming, silent symphony of color and movement that had been waiting there, perfectly preserved for roughly 17,000 years. News of the discovery spread like wildfire, first through the local village and then across the globe. Archaeologists and art historians descended upon Lascaux, hailing it as the Sistine Chapel of prehistory. The sophistication of the work was utterly astonishing. These weren't crude stick figures or simple outlines. The artists used the natural contours of the rock to give their subjects a shocking three-dimensional vitality. They employed complex techniques like spray painting, using hollow bones or reeds to blow pigment onto the walls, and mixed their paints from mineral pigments like iron oxide for reds and yellows and manganese dioxide for blacks. The sheer scale and artistic mastery suggested this was no casual doodling. This was a deliberate, monumental effort by highly skilled individuals who possessed a deep understanding of their world and a powerful desire to represent it. The cave's public opening in 1948 turned it into an international sensation. For 15 years, over 1 million visitors walked through its chambers, all desperate to witness this miracle of prehistory. But this very admiration nearly became its undoing. The constant traffic changed the cave's delicate microclimate. The warmth of human bodies, the moisture from our breath, and the introduction of outside contaminants led to the growth of a green algae known as lampenflora, which began to spread across the paintings like a disease. White calcite crystals also started to form, threatening to obscure the ancient artwork forever. Faced with an impossible choice between sharing this wonder with the world and saving it for future generations, the French government made the heartbreaking decision to seal the original cave from the public in 1963. The awe that led to its discovery had, ironically, forced it back into a protective darkness, leaving us with facsimiles and a profound mystery that only deepened with its closure. To truly grasp the astonishing achievement of Lascaux, you must mentally step inside its most iconic space, the breathtaking Hall of the Bulls. This isn't a mere tunnel or a small alcove. It's a grand, cavernous chamber that served as the main gallery for the artists. The moment you enter, your eyes are drawn upward and across every available surface, where a majestic parade of animals seems to be in perpetual motion. The scale is the first thing that strikes you. Dominating the scene are 4 colossal black aurochs, the now extinct ancestors of modern cattle, with their powerful, muscular bodies and horns that sweep forward in formidable curves. One of these giants stretches an incredible 17 feet from head to tail, a monumental feat of painting that required scaffolding, careful planning, and incredible coordination. They are accompanied by a graceful, painted horse that appears to be leaping right over the back of one auroch, and a procession of elegant, smaller deer. This isn't a random collection of images. It feels like a composed, intentional narrative frozen in time. What makes these figures so vibrantly alive, even after all these millennia, is the ingenious way the artists worked with the cave, not just on it. They didn't see the wall as a flat, blank canvas. Instead, they studied the natural contours of the rock, the bulges, the dips, the curves, and incorporated them into their art. A natural swell in the limestone becomes the powerful, rounded shoulder muscle of a bull. A crevice or crack in the ceiling might be used to define the line of an animal's back, giving it depth and dimension. This masterful use of the rock's topography creates a stunning three-dimensional effect, making the animals appear to breathe and move in the flickering torchlight. You can almost hear the thunder of hooves and feel the raw power emanating from the stone. This level of artistic sophistication shatters any outdated notion of cavemen as simple brutes. These were keen observers of nature, brilliant technicians, and visionary artists. This leads us to the central, haunting question hanging in the air of the Hall of the Bulls: why these animals? The choice feels deeply intentional. Aurochs weren't the most common prey. They were massive, dangerous, and difficult to hunt. Horses and deer were more common food sources, but their depiction here feels more celebratory than instructional. One compelling theory is that these paintings served as a form of sympathetic magic. By depicting a successful hunt, perhaps showing animals pierced with spears or traps, the community could spiritually will that success into reality, a way to assert control over an unpredictable and dangerous world. Alternatively, the chamber might have been a sacred space for initiation rituals, where young hunters would come to connect with the spirit of the animals they pursued, learning to respect the creatures that sustained their lives. Another fascinating perspective moves beyond the practical world of hunting altogether. Perhaps these animals weren't literal prey but powerful spiritual symbols. The auroch, with its immense strength, could represent raw, untamable power or a specific deity. The horse, a symbol of freedom and mobility across countless cultures, might have held a similar revered status. The composition itself, with animals overlapping and interacting, could tell a creation myth or a story from their oral history that is now forever lost to us. The sheer investment of time, skill, and resources to create this gallery in a deep, dark, difficult-to-access cave strongly suggests its purpose was profoundly important to their culture. It was likely a central place for ceremony, storytelling, and forging a shared identity, a prehistoric cathedral where the community explored what they feared, what they revered, and what it meant to be alive in their world. But to find the most tantalizing clue to what truly happened in these caves, we have to leave the grand gallery behind and descend into a much more hidden and perilous space. Deep within the labyrinth of Lascaux, beyond the main chambers, lies a narrow shaft that drops away into the earth. It's here, in this secluded and almost claustrophobic spot, that we encounter the most bizarre and discussed painting in the entire cave system, the scene known simply as the shaft. This isn't a sweeping mural of a herd. It's a concentrated, powerful, and deeply strange image that feels like a single frozen frame from a story we can no longer hear. The composition is unlike anything else in Lascaux. On the left, a massive, powerfully rendered bison stands its ground, its body bristling with fury and its entrails spilling out from its belly as if it has been grievously wounded by a spear. Facing the bison is a stick-like human figure with a bird's head, its body lying horizontally as if falling backward or perhaps in a deep trance. The man appears to be in a state of arousal, adding a layer of raw, biological intensity to the scene. And then, off to the right, almost disconnected from the central drama, a rhinoceros is walking away, its tail raised. The inclusion of the rhino is particularly mysterious, as this animal is rarely depicted in cave art from this region. These three elements, the wounded bison, the birdman, and the departing rhino, are placed together with clear intent, yet their relationship is anything but clear. This singular image has become a Rorschach test for archaeologists, with each expert seeing a different story. The most straightforward interpretation is that it depicts a literal hunting accident. Perhaps a hunter, disguised in bird feathers for camouflage, managed to wound a bison but was fatally trampled in the process. The rhino, startled by the commotion, is simply fleeing the scene. This literal narrative makes sense on the surface, but it feels incomplete. Why choose this deeply hidden, difficult-to-access spot for such a specific personal tragedy? Why give the man a distinct bird's head, transforming him into something more than human? This is where the more spiritual and symbolic theories take flight. Many researchers believe the shaft scene is a powerful depiction of a shamanic ritual. In numerous indigenous cultures around the world, shamans are believed to enter trance states to communicate with the spirit world, often for healing or to ensure a successful hunt. They frequently describe their souls leaving their bodies, sometimes taking on the form of a bird to travel to other realms. In this light, the scene transforms. The bird-headed figure isn't a dying hunter, he is a shaman in the throes of a vision. The wounded bison could represent the spirit of the animal, which the shaman must spiritually negotiate with or appease to guarantee that the tribe's future hunts will be bountiful. The rhino, often a symbol of solitude and power, might be a spirit guide or a representation of the raw, untamed forces of nature. Another compelling angle views the scene not as a record of an event, but as a mythological story, a prehistoric piece of lore. Perhaps this illustrates a creation myth or a tale of a divine hunter who sacrificed himself to bring the gift of game to his people. The bird aspect could connect him to a deity or an ancestral spirit. The fact that the rhino is walking away adds a narrative tension. Is it indifferent to the drama, or is its departure a crucial part of the story? Without a written record, we are left to read the visual language, and the shaft scene speaks in a potent but frustratingly foreign dialect. What makes this painting so central to the mystery of Lascaux is its raw vulnerability. It lacks the celebratory, communal feel of the Hall of the Bulls. This feels personal, intense, and other. It strongly suggests that these caves were not just museums or hunting manuals, they were portals. The depth, the darkness, the flickering torchlight, and the overwhelming presence of the art would have been profoundly sensory, capable of inducing altered states of consciousness. The shaft scene might be the ultimate expression of that experience, a first-hand account of a journey into the spirit world, painted by someone who believed they had been there. It's a haunting reminder that the artists of Lascaux were not just painting what they saw with their eyes, but what they experienced in their souls. Who were the visionary minds behind these breathtaking galleries? They were the Cro-Magnon people, our anatomically modern human ancestors, who inhabited southwestern France roughly 17,000 years ago during what we call the Upper Paleolithic period. Their world was one of Ice Age challenges and profound connections to the natural environment, a reality far removed from our own, yet they shared the same creative spark and intellectual curiosity that defines us today. These were not primitive brutes, they were sophisticated individuals with a deep understanding of their world and an undeniable drive to translate their experiences into enduring art. Their society was built on cooperation, complex communication, and a shared culture rich enough to support the creation of what remains one of humanity's most stunning artistic achievements. The tools and materials they used, while sourced directly from their environment, reveal a startling degree of innovation and technical skill. Their palette was born from the earth itself. Vibrant reds and yellows were painstakingly ground from iron-rich ochre. Deep blacks were rendered from manganese dioxide or charcoal, and pure whites came from crushed calcite. These powdered pigments were then mixed with binders, possibly animal fats, plant juices, or even water, to create a durable paint that could adhere to the rough limestone walls. For application, their toolkit was both ingenious and effective. They used brushes made from animal hair or frayed twigs to outline figures and fill in details. They mastered a form of spray painting, using hollow bones or reeds to blow pigment directly onto the rock surface, a technique brilliantly used to create soft gradients and the illusion of volume around the animal's muzzle and hooves. They even employed stone scrapers to smooth the walls before painting and used pads of moss or animal fur as blotters. Scaffolding must have been erected to reach the soaring ceilings of chambers like the Hall of the Bulls, indicating these projects were collaborative, planned endeavors. This level of sophistication strongly suggests that these artists were not casual doodlers but highly trained individuals, perhaps even specialists within their community. The knowledge required to locate and prepare specific minerals, to understand the chemical properties of binders, and to execute complex compositions in challenging, dark environments points toward a tradition of passed-down expertise. It is easy to imagine a master artist, guided by the flickering light of a stone lamp fueled with animal fat, instructing an apprentice on how to capture the curve of a bison's horn or the muscular tension in a horse's leg. This wasn't just art for art's sake, it was a culturally vital practice, and the skills needed to perform it were likely considered invaluable, bestowed upon only a select few. This hints at a social structure more complex than we often attribute to hunter-gatherer bands, one that could support and value such specialized roles. Ultimately, the very existence of Lascaux forces us to reconsider everything we assume about prehistoric life. The incredible investment of time, resources, and skill required to create this sanctuary deep within the earth signifies that it served a purpose far beyond decoration. It was clearly central to their spiritual or symbolic world. The artists were more than just painters, they were perhaps storytellers, historians, ritualists, or shamans, the intermediaries between the physical world and the unseen forces that governed their existence. They gave form to the spirits of the animals they relied upon, visualized their myths, and perhaps documented their visions. In doing so, they left behind an indelible record not of their survival but of their humanity. They were asking the same big questions about life, death, and our place in the universe that we still grapple with today, and they answered them with the most powerful tool at their disposal, awe-inspiring art. So how do we know these masterpieces were created 17,000 years ago? Pinpointing the age of something that predates written history by millennia is a complex scientific puzzle, one that archaeologists have pieced together using two powerful methods: direct physical testing and careful stylistic analysis. The most definitive tool in their arsenal is radiocarbon dating. This process relies on a simple, elegant fact of nature. All living things absorb carbon from the atmosphere, including a radioactive isotope called carbon-14. When an organism dies, it stops absorbing carbon, and the existing carbon-14 begins to decay at a very predictable rate. By measuring how much of this isotope remains in an organic sample, scientists can calculate how long ago that organism died. For Lascaux, this meant finding tiny fragments of the paintings themselves that contained organic material. The artist's charcoal-based black paints were perfect for this. Researchers collected microscopic samples from these drawings, a painstaking process that must avoid contamination at all costs. By analyzing the remaining carbon-14 in the charcoal, they could determine the exact moment the tree that produced it was burned to make the pigment. Dozens of these tests from various paintings throughout the cave consistently returned dates clustered around 17,000 years ago, placing their creation firmly within a period known as the Magdalenian culture. This was a time of incredible artistic flourishing across Europe, when our ancestors were producing not only cave paintings but also intricate carvings on bone and antler, sophisticated tools, and personal adornments, revealing a complex and spiritually rich society. But radiocarbon dating has its limitations. It can only date organic materials, so the vibrant red and yellow paints made from mineral ochre are invisible to its clock. Furthermore, the cave environment itself can contaminate samples. Water seeping through the limestone, the growth of microorganisms, or even the breath of modern visitors before the cave was sealed could potentially skew the results. There's also the challenge of getting a truly representative date for the entire gallery. Was the entire cave painted in one concentrated burst of creativity, or was it a project that spanned centuries, even millennia? The dating suggests the latter. Some figures, like the Great Black Bulls, consistently test around 17,000 years old, while others might be slightly older or younger. This points to Lascaux not as a single event, but as a living, evolving sanctuary, used and added to by generations of artists over a long period. This is where the second method of dating comes into play: stylistic analysis. Art historians carefully study the techniques, subject matter, and artistic conventions used in the paintings and compare them to other dated sites across Europe. Think of it like recognizing the distinct brushstrokes of an impressionist painting versus the bold lines of pop art. Experts can identify the style of a particular time and place. The Magdalenian period has a very recognizable artistic signature: a focus on dynamic, realistic large animals, the masterful use of the rock's natural contours, and specific compositional elements like the placement of animals in procession or the use of twisted perspective for horns. The artwork at Lascaux fits perfectly within this Magdalenian framework, providing a powerful confirmation of the radiocarbon dates. Yet even this method can spark debate. In a cave as vast and complex as Lascaux, with figures layered over one another, experts can disagree on the sequence of events. Does a painting of a horse that lies beneath a painting of a bison mean the horse is older, or were they part of a single planned composition? Sometimes, a single panel might show a mix of styles, suggesting that different artists from different times contributed to the same narrative. The famous shaft scene, with its unique Birdman figure, is so singular that some researchers have wondered if it represents an even older or perhaps a slightly later tradition, a unique spiritual expression that stands apart from the main galleries. Understanding this timeline is far more than an academic exercise. It is absolutely crucial for unlocking the meaning of Lascaux. Knowing that these paintings were created during the Magdalenian period gives us vital cultural context. This was the tail end of the last ice age. The landscape outside the cave would have been a cold, open steppe populated by the very animals immortalized on the walls: mammoths, bison, reindeer, and woolly rhinoceros. The people were highly adapted hunters living in a world of profound beauty and extreme danger. By placing the art in this specific moment, we can better interpret it not as random doodles, but as a profound response to their environment, a way to understand, honor, and perhaps gain power over the forces that govern their survival. The age of Lascaux anchors it in a real world, making the breathtaking artistry inside not a mysterious anomaly, but a powerful testament to human resilience and creativity at the dawn of our history. Of all the theories put forward to explain Lascaux, one of the most enduring and intuitive is the idea of hunting magic. This concept, championed by early 20th century scholars like Abbé Henry Breuil, suggests that these caves were essentially prehistoric ritual chambers where art functioned as a form of sympathetic magic. The core principle is beautifully simple. By creating an image of something, you gain a measure of power over it. For a society utterly dependent on the success of the hunt for its survival, this would have been a profoundly powerful act. Imagine a community gathering in the flickering torchlight deep within the earth. A shaman or artist would carefully paint the image of a bison or a deer, and then perhaps the hunters would ritually kill the image by throwing spears at it or painting wounds upon it. This symbolic act was believed to spiritually influence the outcome of the real hunt the following day, ensuring the animal would be vulnerable, that the hunters would be accurate, and that the tribe would be fed. There is compelling evidence within the caves themselves that seems to support this idea. Look no further than the dramatic shaft scene we just explored. The bison is quite clearly and viscerally wounded, its entrails spilling onto the ground in a graphic depiction of a successful, if violent, kill. In other parts of the cave, animals are shown with lines or dots that could easily be interpreted as spears or traps. This theory taps into a universal human impulse that we still recognize today: the desire to visualize success in order to manifest it. An athlete might visualize scoring a goal, a student might picture acing an exam. For the people of Lascaux, the stakes were infinitely higher. Their survival literally depended on the unpredictable behavior of massive, powerful animals. The act of painting them, of asserting control over their image in the sacred darkness of the cave, could have been a crucial psychological tool to reduce anxiety and build confidence before facing the very real dangers of the hunt. However, as compelling as the hunting magic theory is, it begins to fray when we examine the full gallery of paintings at Lascaux. The most significant hole in the argument is the choice of subjects. If the goal was to ensure a successful hunt, why devote so much incredible detail and prominent space to animals that were either not primary food sources or were incredibly dangerous and rarely hunted? The magnificent aurochs, which dominate the Hall of the Bulls, were formidable beasts that would have been extremely risky to pursue. Similarly, the presence of predators like bears and lions, which are also depicted in Paleolithic art elsewhere, doesn't fit a narrative focused solely on procuring food. You don't hunt a lion for dinner, you avoid it. Furthermore, many of the most beautifully rendered animals show no signs of being attacked at all. They are portrayed in their full vitality and power, simply running, grazing, or resting. This celebration of the animal's spirit seems to contradict the idea of a ritualistic killing. This has led many critics to propose that if magic was involved, it might have been a different kind of magic altogether. Perhaps the purpose was not to kill the animal's spirit, but to honor it. In many hunter-gatherer societies, there is a deep-seated belief in a covenant between the hunter and the hunted. The animal is seen as giving itself to the people, and in return, the people must show respect to its spirit to ensure that other animals will continue to make themselves available in the future. From this perspective, the paintings could be part of an appeasement or thanksgiving ritual. By creating such stunningly accurate and powerful portraits, the artists were paying homage to the very essence of the creature, acknowledging its importance and its sacrifice. The act of painting becomes a form of communication and reverence, a way to maintain the balance of the natural world upon which they depended. So, where does this leave the hunting magic theory? It is likely too simplistic to be the sole explanation for the wonder of Lascaux, but it is also too powerful to be dismissed entirely. It probably represents one thread in a much more complex tapestry of meaning. For certain paintings, in certain contexts, the act of depicting a wound or a spear likely was a magical act. But for the grand murals of healthy, vibrant animals, the purpose was almost certainly more nuanced. The caves likely served multiple functions for their creators: a school for teaching young hunters about animal behavior, a temple for honoring the spirits of the world, a canvas for recording myths, and yes, occasionally, a ritual space for performing the sympathetic magic that would help bring food back to the community. The theory remains a vital piece of the puzzle because it forces us to empathize with the very human fears and hopes that drove these artists into the dark, pigment in hand, seeking to shape their destiny through the power of art. The shift from viewing Lascaux as a tool for hunting to a portal for the spirit world brings us to one of the most profound and widely discussed theories, that these caves were the sacred setting for shamanic rituals. This perspective suggests the artists were not merely painters, but spiritual specialist shamans who ventured into the darkness to enter trance states and bridge the gap between the human and spirit realms. In this light, the entire cave complex transforms from a simple gallery into a deeply spiritual landscape, a place where the veil between worlds was believed to be thin. Central to this theory is the enigmatic shaft scene. That bird-headed figure lying prone before the wounded bison is no longer seen as a clumsy hunter meeting his end. Instead, he becomes a shaman in the throes of an ecstatic vision. The bird's head is powerfully symbolic. Across countless indigenous cultures, shamans describe their souls taking flight in the form of a bird during trance journeys, traveling to other realms to gain knowledge, heal the sick, or negotiate with animal spirits. The scene could be a literal depiction of such a journey. A shaman, having spiritually left his body, is communing with the spirit of the bison. The animal's spilled entrails might not represent a physical death, but a spiritual offering or a symbol of the shaman's own psychic dismemberment and rebirth, a common theme in shamanic initiation stories. Even the aloof rhinoceros walking away could be interpreted as another powerful spirit presence, indifferent to the intense drama unfolding between the shaman and the bison. Beyond this single dramatic panel, supporters of the shamanic theory point to the many abstract signs that punctuate the animal figures throughout Lascaux. The clusters of dots, the series of parallel lines, the zigzags and grids, these could be far more than simple decorations. Researchers like David Lewis Williams have drawn compelling parallels between these patterns and the visual phenomena experienced during altered states of consciousness. When entering a trance, whether through rhythmic drumming, dancing, sensory deprivation, or the use of psychoactive plants, the human brain often produces a series of predictable visual hallucinations. These typically begin with geometric patterns known as entoptic phenomena, which include exactly the kinds of dots, grids, and wavy lines we see on the cave walls. As the trance deepens, the brain tries to make sense of these shapes, often interpreting them as meaningful objects or animals, a process called construal. This could explain why we see abstract patterns sometimes alone and sometimes integrated into the larger forms of animals, as if the artist was painting the very stages of their visionary experience. The very environment of the cave itself supports this idea. The journey deep underground, away from the sun and the familiar world, is a classic metaphor for a descent into the subconscious. The total darkness, broken only by the flickering, unpredictable light of a grease lamp or torch, would have been profoundly disorienting. The play of light and shadow on the naturally undulating walls could have made the painted animals appear to move, breathe, and emerge from the rock itself. This sensory-rich, otherworldly atmosphere would have been perfectly designed to induce the kind of altered state necessary for shamanic journeying. The cave was not a passive canvas, it was an active participant in the ritual, a tool to facilitate a transformative experience. Critics of the theory rightly caution against applying a universal template to all prehistoric art, noting that shamanic practices, while widespread, are not identical across all cultures. They argue that without direct ethnographic evidence from the Magdalenian people themselves, we cannot be certain this was their belief system. Yet, the sheer consistency of shamanic traditions among hunter-gatherer societies across the globe, from the Sand people of southern Africa to the indigenous tribes of the Americas, offers a powerful comparative model. It provides a framework that makes sense of the most puzzling aspects of Lascaux: the combination of hyper-realistic animals with abstract symbols, the choice of dangerous and inedible animals, and the placement of art in deep, inaccessible chambers. The shamanic theory doesn't reduce the art to a single function. Instead, it elevates it to a complex expression of a spiritual worldview, where art was the language used to document encounters with the divine and explore the very nature of existence itself. But what if the meaning of Lascaux wasn't just found in the spirits of the earth, but also in the stars above? A compelling and controversial theory proposes that these cave walls served as the first planetariums, and that the artists of Lascaux were not just shamans but ancient astronomers. This idea, championed by researchers like Dr. Michael Rappingluck, suggests that the animal figures are more than just spiritual symbols. They are sophisticated representations of constellations, mapping out the night sky deep within the safety of the earth. The most famous example of this celestial interpretation points directly to the grandest figure in the entire cave, the colossal black bull in the Hall of the Bulls. Dr. Rappingluck and others argue that this powerful auroch is a perfect match for the constellation we know today as Taurus. The sweeping, forward-curving horns of the bull mirror the distinct V-shape of the Hyade star cluster that forms the head of the bull in the sky. But the evidence doesn't stop with a single shape. Just above the bull's shoulder, within the painting itself, a precise cluster of 6 small dots is clearly visible. This, the theory suggests, is a direct depiction of the Pleiades star cluster, which has been culturally associated with bulls and cattle for millennia across numerous ancient civilizations. The fact that this specific star group is positioned exactly where it would be in relation to the constellation Taurus is a coincidence that is simply too striking for proponents of this idea to ignore. This theory radically expands our understanding of Paleolithic capabilities. It implies that these early humans possessed a complex and precise knowledge of the night sky, tracking the slow, precessional movement of the stars over vast periods of time. If true, the caves could have functioned as elaborate celestial calendars. The changing positions of constellations throughout the year would have been crucial for survival, signaling the changing seasons, the migration patterns of herds, and the optimal times for planting or hunting. By creating a fixed, permanent record of these celestial patterns on the cave walls, the community could have passed down this vital astronomical knowledge through generations, ensuring their survival in a world governed by the rhythms of nature. Further supporting this idea are investigations into the cave's alignment and acoustic properties. Some researchers have noted that during the summer solstice, the setting sun might have aligned with the cave's entrance in a way that projected a beam of light deep into the cavern, perhaps illuminating specific paintings at a particularly significant time of year. Others point to the presence of seemingly abstract marks and lines that could be interpreted as notations for lunar cycles or other astronomical events. When you combine this with the potential for shamanic ritual, the theory becomes even more fascinating. perhaps the shaman's journey wasn't just into the spirit world, but also a cosmic one, using the cave as a map to navigate the heavens and bring back knowledge that was both spiritually and practically essential for the tribe. However, the astronomical theory is not without its fierce critics. The main objection is the immense span of time involved. Due to the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of Earth's axis, the night sky 17,000 years ago would have looked dramatically different than it does today. The constellations we recognize now, like Taurus, would not have been in the same position or even formed the same patterns. Skeptics argue that projecting our modern constellations onto these ancient paintings is a form of pareidolia, seeing meaningful patterns where none exist, much like seeing shapes in clouds. The 6 dots above the bull could represent anything: falling raindrops, wounds, or simply a decorative pattern with no celestial meaning at all. Without any written record or continuous cultural tradition to confirm the meaning, the star map theory remains an intriguing but unproven hypothesis, a beautiful story written in the stars that we can never fully verify. This brings us to a theory that frames the cave not as a temple or an observatory, but as the world's first library, a sacred archive where stories were written in paint and stone. What if the sprawling galleries of Lascaux are not a collection of separate images, but interconnected chapters in a vast prehistoric mythology? The concept of storytelling resonates deeply because it addresses a fundamental human need to make sense of our world through narrative. For a culture without a written language, these vivid, dynamic paintings would have been the most powerful medium available to record and transmit the epic tales that defined their identity, their history, and their understanding of the cosmos. We can see this narrative quality in the very composition of the panels. Look at the way the animals interact in the Hall of the Bulls. They aren't just placed randomly, they seem to be in relation to one another. A horse leaps over the back of an auroch. A procession of stags appears to be swimming across a river, their heads held high. These aren't static portraits, they feel like frozen moments from a larger story. The artists may have used the entire cave's layout to guide and initiate through a sequential narrative. The journey from the entrance through the various chambers and finally down into the deepest, most hidden areas like the shaft could have mirrored the hero's journey in a myth, moving from the familiar world into a realm of adventure and transformation before returning. No single image better exemplifies this than the shaft scene. Under the lens of mythology, this bizarre tableau transforms from a record of a hunt or a shamanic vision into a pivotal moment from a legendary tale. The bird-headed man might not be a shaman, but a mythological hero or a demigod with supernatural abilities. The wounded bison could be a monstrous foe from the spirit world. The aloof rhinoceros walking away with its tail raised might be a divine bystander or an omen of things to come. This scene has all the elements of a classic myth, a hybrid creature, a violent struggle, sacrifice, and enigmatic symbols. It feels like the climax of a story we can almost but not quite reconstruct. Was it a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris, a creation myth explaining the origin of hunting? A heroic saga about a figure who bridged the worlds of humans and animals? The answers are lost, but the power of the story remains. This theory also provides a compelling explanation for the incredible diversity of animal species depicted. If the purpose was purely functional, like hunting magic, we would expect to see mostly the common prey animals. But Lascaux is filled with creatures that held symbolic rather than dietary importance. The powerful, rarely hunted auroch might represent brute strength or a foundational earth spirit. The horse could symbolize freedom, travel, or the wind. The few depictions of felines and bears might cast them as antagonists or trickster figures in these stories. Each animal becomes a character in a rich mythological bestiary, their interactions on the wall reflecting the complex relationships between the forces of nature as understood by the people. Ultimately, viewing Lascaux as a storyboard for mythology helps us understand its role as the bedrock of cultural memory. In an oral culture, stories are everything. They contain the accumulated wisdom, laws, and history of a people. Elders could have used these vivid illustrations to teach the young about their ancestry, the reasons behind their rituals, and the proper way to live in the world. A painting of a successful hunt could be a story about cooperation and skill. A depiction of a dangerous animal could be a parable about respect for nature. The act of gathering in the cave to hear these stories, surrounded by the very images being described, would have been an immersive, unforgettable experience, burning these essential lessons into the minds of every new generation. The caves were not silent galleries, they were echoing with the voices of storytellers, ensuring that even without written words, their world would not be forgotten. While the animals of Lascaux capture our immediate awe with their vitality and scale, to overlook the abstract signs scattered among them is to miss half the conversation. Tucked beside a charging bison or clustered near a horse's head are hundreds of enigmatic symbols, rows of dots, series of parallel lines, checkerboard grids, and the haunting imprints of human hands. These are not mere decorations or artistic flourishes. They are a cryptic code, a silent language left behind by people who could not write, yet were clearly desperate to communicate something profound. Deciphering this code is perhaps the greatest challenge in understanding Lascaux, and it forces us to ask what these marks meant to the individuals who felt compelled to leave them in the sacred dark. One of the most prevalent and intriguing types of symbols is the hand stencil. Found in various chambers, these were created by placing a hand flat against the rock wall and then blowing pigment, often through a hollow bone, all around it. The result is a powerful, ghostly negative image, a personal signature frozen in time. But whose hand was it? The analysis of these stencils has revealed a stunning fact. Many were made by women and adolescents. This single finding completely shatters the old stereotype of lone male hunters as the sole artists. It suggests that the rituals within Lascaux were likely communal affairs involving much of the tribe. A hand stencil might have been a rite of passage, a way to claim a connection to the sacred space, or a form of signing one's name to a collective spiritual act. It is the most direct, intimate link we have to the people of Lascaux, a literal touch across millennia. Beyond the personal are the profoundly puzzling geometric signs. The repetition of specific symbols like the barbed sign that looks like a series of branching lines, or the aviform, which resembles a tiny, stylized bird across different caves and vast distances, is a massive clue. It strongly suggests these were not random doodles but part of a shared symbolic language, or at the very least a set of shared concepts understood by Paleolithic groups across what is now Europe. This points to a level of cultural connection and shared belief that we are only beginning to appreciate. One compelling theory is that these signs functioned as a primitive but effective form of writing. A series of dots or lines could represent a tally, counting days, moon cycles, or the number of animals in a herd. A unique symbol might denote a specific clan or family group, a kind of prehistoric coat of arms marking their territory or their contribution to the art. Another fascinating angle views these symbols not as written language, but as maps of the spirit world. Researchers like David Lewis Williams draw parallels between these geometric patterns and the phosphenes, the dots, grids, and zigzags, that the human brain reliably generates during altered states of consciousness, such as in trances, migraines, or sensory deprivation. If shamans were indeed using the caves for vision quests, they might have been painting the very hallucinations they witnessed in their trances, mapping the stages of their journey into the spirit realm. In this view, a cluster of dots isn't counting anything tangible, it's documenting a spiritual experience. A grid might represent a portal or a barrier between worlds. This theory beautifully explains why abstract signs are often integrated into the larger animal figures, as if the visionary was seeing the spirit animal emerge from or be surrounded by these geometric patterns. The true power of Lascaux's symbolism likely lies in a combination of these ideas. A single symbol could have held multiple layers of meaning simultaneously, its interpretation depending on the context and the ritual. A hand stencil was both a personal signature and a ritual act of connection. A set of dots could be a practical lunar calendar for tracking seasons and a symbolic representation of the stars in the night sky, guiding spiritual journeys. This multifaceted purpose is what makes these signs so vital. While the animals show us what the Paleolithic people saw, the symbols offer us a tantalizing, fragmented glimpse into how they thought. They reveal a mind capable of abstraction, of systems, of assigning meaning to form. They prove that our ancestors were not just brilliant observers of the external world, but deep explorers of the internal one of consciousness, community, and the invisible structures that give life order and meaning. To ignore these signs is to see only the illustrations in a book and skip all the text. We appreciate the beauty but completely miss the story. Now, let's step away from the visual and consider another powerful sense that would have shaped the experience within these caves: sound. The silence of Lascaux today is a modern phenomenon. In its heyday, this underground sanctuary would have been alive with noise, and it turns out the very rock itself was an active participant in these sonic rituals. Recent archaeological research has uncovered a fascinating and undeniable pattern. The chambers with the highest concentration of exquisite artwork are also the ones with the most remarkable acoustic properties. It's a correlation that is simply too consistent to be a coincidence, suggesting that sound was not just background noise, but a central feature of why these specific spots were chosen for painting. Acoustic scientists using specialized equipment have mapped the caves and found that these painted chambers act as natural amplifiers and resonators. Certain frequencies, particularly those within the range of the human voice and the deep thrum of a drum, are powerfully enhanced. A single clap can transform into a rolling echo that seems to come from every direction at once. A low chant would have vibrated through the very floor, traveling up through the bodies of the participants and creating an incredibly immersive, multi-sensory experience. In the absolute darkness, broken only by the flickering, unpredictable light of animal fat lamps, this auditory landscape would have been profoundly disorienting and transformative. You wouldn't just see the animals on the walls, you might feel their presence through a sound that seemed to emanate from the rock itself. This sonic environment provides a crucial piece of evidence for the shamanic ritual theory. Across cultures, rhythmic sound is one of the most common and effective tools for inducing trance states. The steady beat of a drum, the repetitive cadence of chanting, or even the constant drip of water in the cave can alter brainwave patterns, guiding a shaman or ritual participant into an altered state of consciousness. In the resonant chambers of Lascaux, this effect would have been magnified exponentially. The sound wouldn't just be heard, it would be felt in your bones, overwhelming the senses and blurring the line between the self and the environment. This sensory overload is a classic pathway to transcendental experiences, making the cave the perfect instrument for spiritual journeying. This also offers a new perspective on the abstract symbols we find alongside the animals. Those clusters of dots and series of lines, which we previously considered as potential written language or spirit maps, might also have a sonic dimension. They could represent a form of musical notation, a count of drum beats, the rhythm of a chant, or a record of echoes perceived during a ritual. Perhaps the artists were not only painting what they saw in their visions, but also what they heard, translating the auditory phenomena of their sacred space into a visual code. The cave, therefore, becomes a complete sensory studio where sight and sound were woven together to create a powerful, unforgettable ritual reality. So, when we try to reconstruct a ceremony in Lascaux, we must imagine it as a full-bodied performance. Picture a group gathered in the Hall of the Bulls, the air thick with the smell of burning fat and ochre pigment. A shaman begins a low, guttural chant, and the cave answers, layering his voice into a chorus of echoes that seem to come from the painted animals themselves. A drummer joins in, and the deep pulses bounce off the walls, becoming a physical force. In this cacophony of amplified sound and dancing shadows, the paintings would have appeared to move and breathe. A bison might seem to snort, a horse to whinny. The combination of visual art and immersive acoustics didn't just depict the spirit world, it actively conjured it, proving that the artists of Lascaux were master composers, conducting experiences that engaged every sense to explore the deepest mysteries of existence. While Lascaux stands as a crowning achievement of prehistoric art, it is far from an isolated phenomenon. It is one brilliant star in a vast constellation of painted caves that stretch across Europe, from the sun-drenched coasts of Spain to the deep river valleys of France. To truly appreciate its significance, we must place it in this wider context, comparing its masterpieces with those from other sanctuaries like the breathtakingly ancient Chauvet Cave and the magnificently detailed Altamira. These comparisons reveal not a single monolithic Paleolithic culture, but a rich tapestry of regional styles, evolving techniques, and shared symbolic traditions that spanned thousands of years. Consider the awe-inspiring Chauvet Cave in southern France. Discovered in 1994, its artwork was immediately recognized as some of the oldest and most sophisticated in the world, with radiocarbon dates pushing back to around 36,000 years ago, more than twice the age of Lascaux. Stepping into Chauvet is a different experience altogether. The artistic style is no less masterful, but the mood and subject matter are distinctly unique. While Lascaux celebrates herds of horses, deer, and mighty aurochs, Chauvet's walls are dominated by dangerous predators. Lions stalk in a pride, rhinoceroses lock horns in combat, and mammoths loom with a quiet, immense power. The artists here were fascinated by the most formidable creatures in their world, often depicting them in a state of dynamic action or tension. The technique is also strikingly different. Chauvet's artists made extensive use of etching, carefully scraping away the dark cave surface to reveal the lighter rock beneath and create stunning details like the shaggy mane of a lion. This focus on predators, combined with the incredible antiquity of the work, suggests a spiritual world deeply concerned with power, danger, and the most formidable forces of nature. On the other hand, the cave of Altamira in northern Spain, often called the Sistine Chapel of Paleolithic art, offers a fascinating comparison from a slightly later period, roughly contemporary with Lascaux. Discovered in the late 19th century, its ceiling is a breathtaking panorama of bison, painted with such astonishing realism and artistic flair that experts initially accused its discoverer of being a fraud. The artists of Altamira shared the Magdalenian love for large herd animals, but their technique for bringing them to life was distinct. They became the undisputed masters of using the natural contours of the rock. They would find a bulge in the ceiling and paint a bison around it so perfectly that the animal appears to be lying on its side, its body rounded and three-dimensional, as if it could stand up and walk off the wall at any moment. The use of polychrome multiple colors blended together to create shading and depth is more advanced here than at Lascaux, resulting in figures that are shockingly lifelike and vibrant. So what do these regional differences tell us? They paint a picture of distinct cultural groups, each with their own local traditions and artistic preferences, yet connected by a shared impulse to create profound art. The people of the Dordogne region around Lascaux favored complex, crowded compositions filled with movement. The artists of the Ardèche region around Chauvet were drawn to the drama and power of predators. And the communities near Altamira perfected a serene, sculptural realism. This wasn't a case of one group simply copying another. It was a continent-wide flourishing of symbolic thought, with each culture developing its own visual language to express its unique relationship with the world. Yet, amidst these differences, the common threads are perhaps even more revealing. The repeated use of caves deep underground, far from living areas, suggests a universal need for secluded, sacred spaces. The persistence of certain abstract signs, like dots, lines, and hand stencils across vast distances and thousands of years, points to a shared vocabulary of symbols, a fundamental grammar of meaning that was understood across different groups. The consistent sophistication of the art itself, requiring prepared pigments, scaffolding, and planned compositions, proves that artistic skill was highly valued wherever these humans settled. By comparing Lascaux to its contemporaries, we see it not as a lone masterpiece, but as a vital chapter in humanity's first great story, a testament to our species' innate and enduring need to make meaning, to awe, and to connect with something greater than ourselves through the enduring power of art. To truly understand the art of Lascaux, we must first step outside the cave and into the world as it existed 17,000 years ago, a world both breathtakingly beautiful and brutally demanding. This was the height of the last great ice age, a period known as the last glacial maximum. Vast ice sheets covered much of northern Europe, and while the Dordogne region where Lascaux is located was not buried under glaciers, it was a cold, open steppe, a kind of Arctic grassland known as a mammoth steppe. The air was crisp and dry, and the landscape would have been populated by a stunning array of megafauna that seem almost mythological to us today. Woolly mammoths with their long, curved tusks, shaggy coated woolly rhinoceroses, giant elk, and massive cave lions. This was the dramatic stage upon which the artists of Lascaux lived their lives, and this environment didn't just surround them, it fundamentally shaped their culture, their beliefs, and the very art they created. The animals that parade across the cave walls are not a random assortment of creatures from a fairy tale. They are a meticulously observed catalogue of the ecosystem these people knew intimately. The majestic herds of horses, the powerful aurochs, and the sturdy red deer depicted at Lascaux were not just impressive sights, they were the essential resources for survival. These were the primary prey animals, the walking larders that provided everything from meat and fat for food to bones and sinew for tools, and hides for warmth and shelter. The art, therefore, can be seen as a profound reflection of a deeply interdependent relationship. By painting these animals with such reverence and accuracy, the artists were honoring the very beings that sustained their existence. Every precise detail of a bison's powerful shoulder hump or a horse's flowing mane represents not just artistic skill, but generations of accumulated knowledge about animal behavior, anatomy, and migration patterns, knowledge that meant the difference between life and death. This deep environmental connection also helps explain some of the curious absences and inclusions in the Lascaux gallery. The most iconic Ice Age giants, the woolly mammoth and the woolly rhinoceros, are either absent or extremely rare at Lascaux, yet we know they lived in the region. Why paint a horse and not a mammoth? The answer likely lies in practicality and frequency of encounter. While mammoths were impressive, they were likely not a regular part of the local diet or hunting routine for this particular group. Their art focused on the animals they interacted with most, the ones that were central to their daily reality. Conversely, the inclusion of more dangerous animals, like the few depictions of felines or the rhinoceros in the shaft scene, might reflect the other side of that relationship, the very real threats and powerful spiritual forces they perceived in their world. These creatures commanded respect and fear, and depicting them could have been a way to symbolically manage that danger. Beyond the choice of subjects, the very purpose of the art may have been a direct response to the immense challenges of their climate. Life on the Ice Age steppe was precarious, herds migrated, weather was unpredictable, and a failed hunt could have catastrophic consequences for a small band of humans. In such a volatile world, the need for control, for understanding, and for seeking favor from unseen forces would have been overwhelming. The elaborate rituals hypothesized to have taken place in Lascaux, whether for hunting, magic, shamanic journeying, or seasonal celebration, can be interpreted as a critical technology for survival. By performing ceremonies deep within the earth, surrounded by images of the animals they depended on, they were not merely creating art, they were participating in a system of belief designed to influence their reality, to ensure the return of the herds, and to reaffirm their place within a powerful and often unforgiving natural world. The cave was their sanctuary, a controlled environment where they could confront the chaos outside and attempt to bring order and meaning to it through the powerful, enduring language of painting. This very act of discovery, the human awe that brought Lascaux to global attention, nearly became its undoing. The cave had survived for 17,000 years in a state of perfect equilibrium, sealed in a dark, cool, and stable environment. The sudden arrival of people shattered that delicate balance. When the cave was opened to the public in 1948, over 1 million visitors walked through its chambers in just 15 years. While their intentions were pure, their presence was a slow-acting poison. Each person brought with them warmth, moisture, and, unbeknownst to anyone at the time, invisible contaminants. The constant exhalation of carbon dioxide and the humidity from bodies began to radically alter the cave's microclimate, creating conditions ripe for a biological crisis. The first visible sign of trouble emerged in the form of a green, fuzzy algae that began to spread across the walls like a disease. This was quickly dubbed the green sickness or maladie verte. It was a direct result of the artificial lighting and the warmth from visitors, which provided both light and heat for photosynthetic organisms to thrive. Then came an even more insidious threat, the white sickness or maladie blanche. This was a coat of white calcite crystals that began to crust over the paintings, threatening to obscure them forever. The crystals were formed by chemical changes in the rock itself, a reaction to the new, moisture-rich atmosphere. For the curators and archaeologists, it was a nightmare scenario. They were watching one of humanity's greatest cultural treasures actively deteriorate before their eyes, and it was our admiration that was causing the damage. The heartbreaking but necessary decision was made to close the original cave to the public in 1963. The doors were sealed and Lascaux was returned to darkness in an attempt to save it. But the battle was far from over. In 2001, a new and even more aggressive fungus, Fusarium solani, erupted inside the cave. This white mold spread with terrifying speed, appearing on the floors, walls, and even some of the paintings themselves. It was a conservation emergency, leading to a massive international effort to treat the outbreak with fungicides and to install a sophisticated and incredibly expensive climate control system designed to replicate the cave's original natural stability. These ongoing struggles highlight an almost impossible ethical dilemma. How do we balance our powerful desire to experience, study, and share these ancient wonders with the absolute necessity of preserving them? Lascaux has become a living laboratory for this very question. The creation of Lascaux II, a breathtakingly accurate replica located nearby, offers one compelling solution. By building a perfect facsimile using the same techniques and pigments, we can give the public an immersive experience without harming the original. It's a testament to modern technology and a profound act of respect, allowing the real cave to rest. Ultimately, the vulnerabilities of Lascaux have taught the world an invaluable lesson in humility. We learned that our role is not to conquer these spaces, but to become their guardians. The conservation protocols developed here, from limiting access to a handful of scientists per year to the constant monitoring of air quality and temperature, have become the gold standard for protecting other fragile sites, from the tombs of Egypt to the caves of Indonesia. Lascaux's pain has become the world's gain, a stark reminder that our greatest treasures are not indestructible. They are a fragile inheritance, and our responsibility is to ensure that they survive, not just for our own generation, but for all the generations yet to come, who deserve to be just as awestruck as we are. Yet the allure of Lascaux extends far beyond academic journals and conservation reports, spilling over into the vibrant realm of modern art and popular culture. Its enigmatic beauty has captivated the imagination of countless contemporary artists who see in those ancient lines not a closed chapter but an open dialogue. The abstract expressionist master Jackson Pollock, renowned for his chaotic drip paintings, was deeply fascinated by the primal energy and subconscious impulse he perceived in Paleolithic art. He saw the cave painters not as primitives, but as fellow travelers on a quest to capture the raw, unfiltered forces of nature and the human psyche. This profound connection suggests that the drive which propelled an artist to trace a hand on a wall 17,000 years ago is the very same impulse that drives a modern artist to splatter paint on a canvas, a universal, timeless need to make a mark and express the inexpressible. This fascination has blossomed into a rich presence across literature and film, where Lascaux serves as a powerful symbol of mystery and origins. Nobel Prize-winning author José Saramago's final novel, The Cave, uses the discovery of a buried chamber even more stunning than Lascaux as a devastating metaphor for a society that has entombed its own humanity under layers of consumerist complacency. The cave represents the forgotten, authentic core of life that the modern world has willingly sealed off. In a completely different tone, the animated film The Croods presents a wildly colorful and fictionalized version of cave painting, portraying it as the birth of storytelling itself, a means to record history, warn of dangers, and forge a family identity. These vastly different interpretations highlight the incredible versatility of Lascaux as a symbol. It can represent the deepest existential fears or the most joyful beginnings of human creativity. Even the world of music has drawn inspiration from these silent halls. The experimental band The Horrors titled their breakthrough album Primary Colors, a direct nod to the elemental ochres and charcoals used by the first artists, channeling a raw, atmospheric sound that feels both ancient and futuristic. This cross-media resonance underscores a fundamental truth. Lascaux provides a unique mirror for our own era. In our digital age, saturated with ephemeral images and virtual experiences, the tangible, physical majesty of these paintings holds a special power. They represent an authentic, enduring connection to a deep past, a hands-on creativity that stands in stark contrast to our rapidly evolving, often disembodied modern world. They remind us of a time when creating art was a physical, communal, and spiritually vital act. Ultimately, the enduring fascination with Lascaux speaks to a profound and shared human yearning. We look at those majestic bulls and graceful horses and we see ourselves. We recognize the universal questions about life, death, our place in the universe, and the desire to communicate something that will outlast our own brief lives. The cave's enduring mystery is its greatest gift because we can never know its full truth with absolute certainty. It remains an open canvas for our own interpretations, fears, and hopes. It connects us to those ancient artists not through a definitive answer, but through a shared sense of wonder. We are united across millennia by the same awe that must have filled them as their torchlight first illuminated the soaring walls, and by the same simple, powerful urge to leave behind a beautiful and meaningful mark for those who will follow. The stunning beauty of Lascaux is undeniable, but its meaning is a different story entirely. Stepping into the academic world surrounding this cave is like entering a room where everyone is shouting in different languages. They're all looking at the same thing, but what they see could not be more different. At the heart of this intellectual battleground is a fundamental and deeply frustrating question. How can we ever truly know what was in the minds of people separated from us by 17,000 years of history, with no written records to guide us? Every theory, no matter how compelling, is built on a foundation of informed guesswork, and this leaves immense room for passionate and sometimes fierce disagreement. Perhaps the most significant schism lies between those who view the cave through a practical, functional lens and those who see it as a purely spiritual or symbolic realm. The traditional hunting magic theory, for all its intuitive appeal, is often criticized for being overly simplistic, a relic of early 20th century thinking that reduces these profound works to a mere how-to guide for survival. Critics argue that this view imposes a modern, economically driven world view onto a culture that likely did not separate the spiritual from the practical. Why would a society invest such immense effort and skill into depicting animals they rarely hunted, like the formidable aurochs, or creatures they didn't hunt at all, like the powerful predators shown at Chauvet? This practical view struggles to explain the full diversity and clear reverence found in the art. On the other side, the shamanic and astronomical theories, while popular and evocative, face their own steep challenges. The most common accusation leveled against them is the charge of ethnographic analogy, or projecting beliefs from documented modern hunter-gatherer societies onto prehistoric peoples. Just because the Sand people of southern Africa enter trance states and see geometric patterns, does that mean the Magdalenian people of France did the same 17,000 years earlier? Skeptics call this a convenient but ultimately unprovable parallel. It risks creating a one-size-fits-all model for human spirituality that may erase the unique and unknowable nuances of their specific culture. The astronomical theory faces similar scrutiny. Seeing the Pleiades in a cluster of 6 dots might feel like a brilliant revelation, but without a continuous cultural tradition to confirm it, it could just be a case of finding patterns we desperately want to see, a phenomenon known as pareidolia. This leads to an even more profound philosophical debate. Can we even call this art in the modern sense? Our contemporary concept of art is often tied to individual expression, aesthetics, and decoration, often created for an audience. But what if the paintings of Lascaux were never meant to be seen in a gallery context? What if their power was entirely in the act of creation itself, a ritual performance whose significance was in the doing, not in the finished product being admired? If the ceremonies took place in near total darkness, with only flickering lamplight to illuminate small sections of the wall at a time, the overall composition was likely never visible to anyone. This completely upends our understanding of its purpose. The value was in the process, the communal effort, and the spiritual transaction that occurred during painting, not in creating a static masterpiece for posterity. This perspective suggests we might be asking the wrong question entirely by searching for a singular meaning in the images, when their true power was kinetic and experiential. Amidst these competing giants, other quieter but no less important theories also vie for attention. Could Lascaux have served as a basic form of visual education, a place where elders taught the young about animal behavior, migration routes, and hunting techniques? The detailed accuracy of the paintings certainly supports this. Or was it primarily a social glue, a project that reinforced group identity and cooperation through a shared, monumental task? The sheer scale of the work required to build scaffolding and prepare pigments implies a highly organized social structure, and participating in such a culturally vital act would have strengthened communal bonds. Ultimately, the fact that Lascaux continues to be such a battleground for ideas is a testament not to a failure of science, but to the profound power of the place itself. Its mystery is its greatest gift. The cave refuses to give up a single, easy answer because its true meaning was likely a complex fusion of all these things and more: ritual, science, storytelling, education, and social ceremony, all intertwined in a way our modern, categorized minds struggle to grasp. The debates rage on because the art is just that good, that rich, and that human. It resonates with something deep within us, compelling every generation to look into that darkness and project its own dreams, its own fears, and its own endless curiosity onto those majestic, silent walls. Amidst these grand theories of hunting magic and shamanic journeys, another compelling idea brings the focus back to the people themselves, suggesting that the true power of Lascaux lay in its ability to forge and strengthen the very fabric of community. Imagine the immense effort required to create this sanctuary, quarrying minerals, mixing complex paints, building scaffolding, and spending countless hours working by the faint, flickering light of animal fat lamps. This was not a solitary endeavor. It was a massive, coordinated project that would have required the participation and cooperation of many individuals, each contributing their specific skills. This collective action in itself would have been a powerful bonding experience, uniting the group around a shared, monumental goal that transcended the daily grind of survival. The cave, therefore, might have been less about controlling the spirit world and more about cementing the human world, serving as a central pillar for social cohesion. The layout of the cave supports this idea of a communal space. While some areas are narrow and restrictive, chambers like the magnificent Hall of the Bulls are vast and cavernous, easily capable of accommodating a sizable group of people. This was a natural auditorium, a place where the community could gather away from the elements. In the evocative dance of torchlight, with the animals seeming to move on the walls, an elder could have recounted the tribe's history, using the paintings as a visual aid. These stories would have explained their origins, their relationship with the animals they hunted, and the values they held dear. For the young members of the group, this could have been where they received their education, learning not just practical hunting strategies by studying the detailed anatomy of the animals, but also their cultural and spiritual responsibilities. The cave was a classroom, a theater, and a cathedral all in one. This theory also provides a fascinating lens through which to view the mysterious hand stencils found throughout the cave. These are not grand artistic statements, they are intensely personal, individual marks. The act of placing a hand on the wall and blowing pigment around it could have been a powerful rite of passage, a way for each person to literally leave their mark on a sacred space that belonged to the entire community. It was a way of signing a collective covenant affirming, "I was here, I am part of this." The fact that these stencils belong to men, women, and adolescents tells us that this was likely an inclusive ritual, strengthening the identity of the entire group, not just a privileged few. It transformed the cave from an abstract gallery into a living record of the people themselves, a testament to their shared presence and collective identity. Ultimately, viewing Lascaux through the lens of social cohesion helps explain its enduring legacy. The rituals performed and the stories told within those walls would have been essential for transmitting culture from one generation to the next, ensuring that knowledge, values, and traditions survived long after individuals were gone. The art served as a permanent, unchanging reference point in a world that was otherwise unpredictable and often dangerous. By gathering in that space, the community reinforced its unique identity, distinguishing itself from other groups and forging a powerful sense of belonging and shared purpose. The paintings were the anchor of their cultural memory, a visual language that everyone could understand, creating a stable foundation upon which their society could be built and sustained for generations. What if the true purpose of Lascaux wasn't about magic or spirits at all, but something far more practical and profoundly human? Imagine it not as a temple, but as the world's first university, a silent, sacred library where the accumulated wisdom of generations was visually encoded on stone walls to ensure the survival and continuity of the tribe. This theory shifts our perspective from the supernatural to the intensely practical, suggesting these breathtaking galleries served as an immersive educational center where knowledge was transferred from elder to youth through the most powerful medium available, awe-inspiring art. The evidence for this is painted across every chamber. Look at the animals themselves. They are not generic symbols, they are incredibly specific, detailed portraits. The artists captured the seasonal changes in the coats of horses and deer, the distinct horn shapes of bison at different ages, and the precise posture of an auroch preparing to charge. This isn't just artistic flair, it's a masterclass in zoology. For a young hunter, studying these images would be like reading a textbook on animal behavior. They could learn to identify prey at a distance, understand its temperament, and recognize signs of injury or vulnerability. A painting of a pregnant mare could indicate the best seasons for hunting, while the depiction of a herd on the move might map out migration patterns. In a world without writing, this visual database was a critical tool for planning successful, efficient hunts that minimized risk and maximized reward. This educational purpose extends beyond simple identification. Some compositions appear to tell specific stories that impart crucial lessons. The famous scene of the falling birdman in the shaft, for instance, could be read not as a shamanic vision, but as a stark cautionary tale. It might graphically illustrate the dire consequences of a poorly executed hunt, showing a hunter being fatally gored after failing to make a clean kill. This would serve as a powerful, unforgettable safety lesson for initiates, teaching respect for their prey and the very real dangers of their profession. Similarly, images of animals with spears painted near their hearts or lungs would precisely demonstrate the most effective killing spots, turning anatomy lessons into life-saving knowledge. The abstract symbols scattered throughout the cave also find a compelling explanation within this theory. Those rows of dots, series of lines, and strange geometric shapes might not be spirit maps but sophisticated mnemonic devices, an early form of notation designed to aid memory. A sequence of 13 marks could represent the number of days between lunar phases, creating a calendar for tracking time and seasons. A unique symbol beside a certain animal might denote its associated clan or territory, teaching social structure and tribal geography. These signs could have been the building blocks of a complex oral tradition, providing visual cues that helped elders remember and recount epic stories about ancestral heroes, the origins of their people, or the laws that governed their society. The cave wall becomes a massive cheat sheet for the cultural memory of an entire people. Ultimately, viewing Lascaux as an educational hub reframes our entire understanding of its social importance. The act of bringing young initiates into the deep, dark cave would have been a powerful rite of passage, separating everyday life from the sacred act of learning. In the flickering torchlight, an elder's voice would have echoed off the walls, bringing the painted animals to life with stories and lessons. This wasn't a passive lecture, it was a multi-sensory, immersive experience designed to make knowledge unforgettable. It ensured that hard-won expertise about the natural world, social rules, and survival strategies were not lost with the death of a skilled hunter or storyteller. The cave guaranteed that the tribe's most valuable asset, its collective knowledge, was preserved, curated, and passed down generation after generation, securing not just their immediate survival, but the enduring legacy of their culture. Even after decades of intense study, the possibility that Lascaux still guards profound secrets is a thrilling and very real one. We tend to think of the cave as a mapped and mastered space, but the reality is far more mysterious. The original discoverers, those 4 teenagers, only found the entrance. They did not fully explore every crevice or passage. There are sections, like the seemingly impassable shaft that leads away from the main gallery, that may conceal chambers still sealed by ancient rock falls or accumulated sediment. Within these hidden spaces, untouched for millennia, could lie paintings that are even older, more complex, or radically different in style, potentially revealing an entire unknown chapter of Paleolithic artistry. The faintest traces of pigment on a wall, invisible to the naked eye, might be the ghost of a magnificent, faded masterpiece, its story waiting for the right technology to bring it back to light. That technology is arriving at an astonishing pace, transforming archaeology from a science of trowels and brushes into a realm of high-resolution 3D imaging and molecular analysis. Researchers are now using laser scanners to create perfect digital twins of the entire cave system, models so precise they can detect micromillimeter changes in the rock surface over time, aiding conservation. More importantly, these scans can reveal subtleties invisible to human eyes, faint engravings beneath paintings, or the exact order of brushstrokes, showing us the artist's hand at work. Hyperspectral imaging, which uses light beyond the visible spectrum, can detect the chemical signature of different pigments, allowing scientists to see completely faded paintings, trace the outlines of figures that have vanished, and even distinguish between different artistic hands based on their unique paint mixtures. The most promising advances lie in the realm of microarchaeology. Scientists can now analyze minuscule samples of pigment, not to date them, but to read them like a chemical biography. They can identify the specific source of the ochre, perhaps tracing it to a quarry dozens of kilometers away, which would map ancient trade routes and reveal the value placed on these materials. They can find microscopic traces of the binding agents. Was it animal fat, plant sap, or water? Which tells us about ritual preparation. They might even one day find a fossilized fingerprint in the paint or a single human hair trapped in a calcite layer, offering a direct genetic link to an individual artist. This isn't science fiction, it's the imminent future of discovery. What could these future findings ultimately reveal? They might finally allow us to decode the abstract symbols. By analyzing the precise context and frequency of each dot, line, and grid across the entire cave, pattern recognition software could identify a true symbolic syntax, proving whether these marks were a form of proto-writing. New dates from previously inaccessible paintings could reveal that Lascaux was used for far longer than we thought, or that its artistic styles evolved in ways that rewrite our timeline of Paleolithic Europe. A newly discovered chamber depicting a wholly unique scene could provide the missing narrative key that makes sense of the entire gallery, turning a collection of interpretations into a confirmed story. The greatest discovery, however, may not be a new painting or a decoded symbol, but a fundamental shift in our perspective. Every new piece of data pushes us further from a single, grand theory and closer to appreciating Lascaux as a living, evolving space of immense complexity. Future research will likely show us that the cave served not one purpose, but many. It was a classroom, a temple, a theater, and an archive all at once. Its meaning changed with each generation that used it. The ongoing exploration of Lascaux, both its physical depths and the digital data we extract from it, promises to do more than just add facts to a textbook. It will continue to humble us, reminding us that the human urge to create, to question, and to seek meaning is a story that is still being told, with its earliest chapters still waiting to be fully read. Believe it or not, the artistic revolution of the 20th century didn't begin in the bohemian cafes of Paris, but deep within a sealed cave in the French countryside. When images from Lascaux were first published, they sent shockwaves through the art world, arriving at a moment when giants like Pablo Picasso and Joan Miro were actively dismantling centuries of European artistic tradition. These modern masters didn't see primitive scribbles, they saw kindred spirits. Picasso himself, after a visit to Lascaux, was famously said to have remarked, "We have invented nothing." This wasn't an admission of defeat, but a profound acknowledgement that the 17,000-year-old artist had already mastered the very concepts he and his contemporaries were fighting to establish. What exactly did these modernists see in those ancient lines? They recognized a radical freedom from convention. The art of Lascaux is utterly unconcerned with the rigid perspectives and realistic proportions that had dominated Western art since the Renaissance. Instead, the Paleolithic artists used distortion for emotional impact, scale for importance, and the natural rock to create a dynamic, immersive experience. Look at the way a horse is painted leaping over the back of a bull in the Hall of the Bulls. It's a clear, purposeful violation of realistic space to tell a story or convey motion. A technique that directly prefigures the Cubist experiments of Picasso and Braque, who shattered objects into multiple viewpoints to capture their essence rather than a single, static likeness. Similarly, the raw, energetic lines and simplified forms of the animals resonated deeply with artists like Miro, whose own work explored a personal lexicon of symbolic shapes and biomorphic figures, tapping into the same universal, subconscious wellspring of imagery. This connection challenges our very definition of art itself. For generations, Western thought had placed art on a linear path of progress, culminating in the technical mastery of the Renaissance and beyond. Lascaux exploded that notion. Here was evidence of a breathtaking artistic peak at the very dawn of human creativity, suggesting that the impulse to create is not about technical evolution but a constant, fundamental human need. The cave paintings forced a dramatic reevaluation. Perhaps art wasn't about perfecting realism, but about expressing something more essential: emotion, spirit, and a raw connection to the world. This realization gave modern artists the permission they needed to break free from tradition and explore abstraction, symbolism, and pure expression, legitimizing their search for a more primal, authentic form of communication. The influence extends beyond philosophy and into pure technique. The apparent spontaneity and gestural energy of the Lascaux brushstrokes, visible in the flowing manes of horses and the powerful muscles of bison, became a touchstone for the abstract expressionists. Artists like Jackson Pollock admired the direct, unmediated connection between the artist's gesture and the mark on the wall. For them, the cave was the original studio, and those ancient painters were the first action painters, using the entire cave wall as their canvas in a physical, almost performative act of creation. Pollock's drip paintings, while aesthetically different, share that same spirit of harnessing primal energy and making the creative process itself the subject of the work. This enduring inspiration proves that Lascaux is far more than an archaeological site. It is a timeless well of creative energy. Contemporary artists continue to pilgrimage there, not to copy the images, but to connect with the source. They are inspired by the bravery of those first artists, their willingness to enter the unknown, both literally into the dark earth and figuratively into the uncharted territory of human expression, and to leave a mark that says, "I am here." In a digital age saturated with fleeting images, the profound physicality and lasting power of these paintings offer a powerful antidote. They remind us that at its heart, true art isn't about technology or trends. It's about that fundamental, urgent human compulsion to make a meaningful mark, to tell a story, and to reach across time to another human being and assert, with a stroke of ochre on a wall, that we are not alone. To truly grasp the power these paintings held, we must extinguish the modern electric lights in our mind and descend into the cave as they did, armed only with the flickering, unstable glow of a simple grease lamp or a resin-soaked torch. This wasn't a sterile museum visit, it was a multi-sensory journey into another state of being. The experience began long before they saw the first painting. The journey inward meant leaving behind the familiar world of sunlight, weather, and birdsong, entering a realm of total silence broken only by the drip of water and the echo of their own footsteps. The temperature would drop, the air would grow still and damp, and the enveloping darkness would have been absolute, a physical pressure on the eyes. This sensory deprivation, the loss of the wide open vistas of the steppe, would have immediately heightened their other senses, priming their minds for something extraordinary. Then the first flicker of light would catch a shape on the wall. In the unpredictable dance of torchlight, the paintings wouldn't appear as static images. The uneven rock surface would make the animals seem to breathe. A swelling in the limestone used to form a bison's shoulder would cast a moving shadow, creating the illusion of muscle twitching. The flickering light source would make legs appear to run and heads seem to turn. This wasn't just art, it was proto-cinema, a stunningly realistic animation of the very creatures that were central to their survival. For a mind already heightened by the darkness and the solemnity of the journey, this would have been a profoundly powerful, possibly even terrifying experience. The boundary between the painted image and a living, breathing spirit would have felt dangerously thin. This carefully engineered environment was a perfect recipe for what psychologists call awe, that overwhelming feeling of reverence and amazement in the face of something vast that transcends our understanding. The sheer scale of the animals, the skill of the artwork, and the impossible fact of its existence deep within the earth would have triggered a deep sense of wonder. Awe has a unique cognitive effect. It makes us feel small, yet deeply connected to something larger than ourselves. It encourages group bonding and reinforces shared beliefs. For the Paleolithic people, this awe would have been directly channeled into the spiritual significance of the place, solidifying the cave's role as a sacred sanctuary where the community's most important bonds and beliefs were forged and reinforced. Beyond awe, the experience likely facilitated trance-like states, a cornerstone of shamanic practice worldwide. The combination of rhythmic movement, chanting, or drumming in those highly resonant chambers would have created a sonic overload. The constant flicker of the light source at a certain frequency could have induced mild photic stimulation, a known trigger for altered states of consciousness. In this disoriented, hyper-suggestive state, the images on the walls would have ceased to be paintings altogether. They would have become visions. A shaman might have seen the painted bison step out of the rock, communicating secrets of the hunt. The abstract dots and lines might have pulsed and swirled, transforming into gateways to the spirit world. The art, therefore, was not just a depiction of a vision, it was a tool to have one. It was a permanent spiritual technology designed to guide the mind across the threshold of ordinary reality. Ultimately, the psychological impact of Lascaux reveals a sophisticated understanding of the human mind that we are only now beginning to appreciate with modern neuroscience. These ancient artists were master manipulators of perception and emotion. They used the tools of immersion, sensory manipulation, and visual storytelling to create an experience that was designed to overwhelm the senses and alter consciousness. They knew that to convince someone of a deeper truth, you must do more than tell them. You must make them feel it in their bones. The cave was their ultimate instrument for this, a place where they could quite literally blow their own minds, using awe and transcendence to explore the greatest mysteries of life, death, and humanity's place in the natural world. Another fascinating lens through which to view Lascaux shifts the focus from the spiritual and educational to the deeply social and political. Some researchers propose that these magnificent paintings were far more than spiritual portals or teaching tools. They were powerful territorial markers, a way for a specific clan or group to literally stamp their identity onto the landscape and assert ownership over a coveted resource. In a world without fences, deeds, or written contracts, what better way to declare this place is ours than by filling it with your unique artistic signature? This theory suggests the cave was less a communal temple and more a statement of clan sovereignty, a gallery of power meant to be seen and understood by rival groups. The evidence for this begins with the cave's location itself. This wasn't a random hole in the ground, it was a valuable piece of real estate. The region around Lascaux was likely rich in resources: water, flint for tools, and most importantly, the game animals depicted on its walls. Controlling such an area would have been a massive advantage for any group. The act of creating such elaborate, time-consuming art in a specific location sends an undeniable message about investment and permanence. It announces that a group has the manpower, the skill, and the will to devote immense effort to a single site, implying a long-term commitment to defending it. The art itself becomes a form of conspicuous consumption, a display of cultural wealth meant to deter rivals by showcasing the group's strength and cohesion. This idea of art as identity is further supported by the specific choice of animals and the potential for unique symbolic styles. While horses, bison, and deer are common across Paleolithic art, the particular way they are rendered at Lascaux, the specific curves of an aurochs horn, the distinctive spotting on a horse's coat, the composition of animals leaping over one another could have functioned as a clan's totem or crest. Much like a Scottish clan's tartan or a medieval knight's coat of arms, These artistic motifs might have been instantly recognizable to other groups, identifying the cave's inhabitants and their claim to the territory. The abstract signs, those puzzling dots and grids, could further reinforce this, acting as a sort of proto-heraldry, a unique symbolic language understood by allies and adversaries alike. Perhaps the most compelling argument for the territorial marking theory lies in the very inaccessibility of the art. Why go to the tremendous trouble of painting masterpieces in the deepest, most difficult-to-reach chambers, far from any natural light? If the primary audience was the group itself for teaching or ritual, wouldn't more accessible areas make more sense? But if the intended audience was outside the group, rivals or allies who might be granted limited, controlled access, then placement takes on a new meaning. Leading a visiting shaman or chieftain deep into the winding, terrifying darkness to finally reveal the breathtaking Hall of the Bulls would have been an overwhelming display of power and control. The awe-inspiring art in such a context becomes a potent diplomatic tool, intimidating rivals with the group's spiritual authority and artistic sophistication, or impressing potential allies with their strength and the richness of their territory. This theory inevitably pushes us to consider the broader social world of the Paleolithic. We often imagine small, isolated bands just struggling to survive, but Lascaux hints at a more complex reality. The coordination required for such a project suggests larger, more organized social units, perhaps clans or tribes that had to negotiate relationships with neighboring groups. Territories would have had to be defined, alliances forged, and conflicts managed. In this light, the cave becomes a central node in a social network, its art serving as a powerful, non-verbal language for intergroup politics. It was a billboard, a treaty, and a flag all rolled into one, asserting a claim not just to a cave, but to a hunting ground, a way of life, and a legacy meant to endure long after the artists themselves were gone. The story of Lascaux does not end with its closure. In many ways, its most important chapter was just beginning. This ancient sanctuary, forced back into protective darkness, has taken on a powerful second life as a global symbol of our shared human heritage. It has transcended its origins as an archaeological site to become an enduring icon, a reminder that the drive to create art is not a modern luxury but a fundamental, ancient part of what makes us human. Its legacy is a living one, inspiring not just historians and artists, but everyone who feels that primal pull to make a meaningful mark on the world. Faced with the heartbreaking necessity to seal the original cave, the French Ministry of Culture embarked on an ambitious and unprecedented project to build a perfect replica. The result, Lascaux II, opened in 1983, just 200 meters from the original site. This was no simple copy. It was a monumental feat of artistry and engineering. Master craftsmen and artists spent over a decade meticulously recreating the cave. They used the same painting techniques, the same mineral pigments, and even studied the original rock surface to cast precise resin reproductions of the walls. The goal was to recreate not just the images, but the entire sensory experience: the scale, the contours, the dim, flickering light, and the overwhelming awe of standing in the presence of these ancient masterpieces. The success of Lascaux II led to an even more ambitious project, Lascaux IV, the International Center for Parietal Art, which opened in 2016. This state-of-the-art facility represents the full evolution of this preservation philosophy. It incorporates a complete, immersive replica of the entire cave, but also uses cutting-edge technology to deepen the understanding of visitors. Through interactive displays, virtual reality, and a massive digital gallery, guests can explore details invisible to the naked eye, zooming in on individual brushstrokes and seeing how the paintings were layered over time. These replicas accomplish a miraculous feat. They allow the magic of Lascaux to be shared with millions of people from around the globe, generating the funds and public interest necessary to protect the fragile original, all while ensuring the authentic cave is left to rest in the stable darkness it requires to survive for another 17,000 years. But the legacy of Lascaux is measured in more than just visitor numbers. It's found in the profound questions it forces us to ask about ourselves. In our modern, hyper-digital age, where images are created and discarded in an instant, the enduring power of these paintings holds a special resonance. They stand in stark contrast to our ephemeral culture. They represent a time when creating art was a physical, communal, and deeply spiritual act that required immense patience, skill, and intention. They remind us that the most powerful forms of communication often have nothing to do with words, and that a simple ochre handprint can carry more emotional weight than 1,000 digital messages. Ultimately, Lascaux matters because it is a mirror. When we look at those majestic bulls and graceful horses, we are not looking at primitive outsiders, we are looking at ourselves. We recognize the same curiosity, the same awe in the face of nature's beauty and power, and the same desperate desire to understand our place in the universe. The cave is a testament to the fact that the human spirit has always sought transcendence, always yearned to create meaning and beauty, and always reached out to the future with a simple, powerful message. We were here, we felt this was important, and we hope you understand. It is a message that has endured through ice ages and millennia, and it continues to speak directly to the artist, the dreamer, and the seeker in all of us. As we've journeyed through the winding passages and grand chambers of Lascaux together, the true magnitude of this place begins to settle in. It's not just a cave, it's a cathedral of human consciousness, a 17,000-year-old testament to the fact that our ancestors were so much more than simple survivors. They were visionaries, storytellers, and seekers, grappling with the same profound questions about life, death, and our place in the universe that still captivate us today. These paintings are far more than pigment on rock. They are a direct window into the minds of those who walked this earth millennia ago. And looking through that window, we see a reflection of our own deepest impulses to create, to understand, and to connect with something greater than ourselves. The beauty of Lascaux lies not in a single answer, but in its glorious mystery. Was it a temple for shamanic rituals, where the flickering torchlight and resonant acoustics guided journeys into the spirit world? Was it an ancient classroom where elders used stunning visual aids to teach the next generation about animal behavior and hunting strategies? Or was it a sophisticated astronomical calendar, mapping the constellations to track the seasons and ensure the tribe's survival? Perhaps it was all these things at once, a multifunctional heart of the community where the practical, the spiritual, and the social were seamlessly intertwined. This lack of a definitive answer isn't a failure of archaeology, it's an invitation. It invites us to engage, to wonder, and to project our own interpretations onto those majestic walls, making the cave a living conversation across time. This is where the conversation turns to you. After exploring all these theories, from hunting magic and star maps to communal storytelling and territorial markers, what resonates most deeply with your own understanding of humanity? When you picture those artists working in the silent, profound darkness, what do you believe was driving them? Do you see a shaman capturing a powerful vision, a teacher illustrating a critical lesson, or an entire community leaving its mark for posterity? I am genuinely fascinated to hear your perspective. Share your thoughts and your own theories in the comments below. Let's continue this exploration together and learn from each other's insights. If this journey into the depths of Lascaux has sparked your curiosity, there are so many more historical enigmas waiting to be unraveled. From the towering stones of Stonehenge to the cryptic lines of the Nazca Desert, human history is filled with puzzles that challenge our understanding of the past. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next adventure into history's greatest mysteries. Thank you so much for watching, for wondering, and for joining me in this awe-inspiring look back at the very dawn of human creativity.